Hey guys, Stealth here. Today we're looking at my Polish support deck. It's the Polish support deck I just used in an online multiplayer game at 10v10. And I wanted to show you guys how you can use this deck to actually support your team and not be an artillery spammer support unit player. I have seen those around, unfortunately. You're not really helping anyone by doing that. Yes, you can inflict some damage, but in the long haul you're not going to be really as effective as you could have been using a support deck. So I hope I can inspire you that a support deck is actually effective. Now let's get right into it. Before we start, just wanted to say that this is a support deck, which means that it's going to excel at supporting other players. If you're doing a 1v1, this deck will not be as effective because there's no one to support. So make sure you're using this deck at the right place at the right time. So in a 10v10, where there's not 8 more support decks, just a lot of mechanized, airborne, anything that's not support, and you can support it. So let's get into it. I have 5 command vehicles, the Scott R3. I think this is a brilliant command vehicle. It is extremely fast on-road and off-road, 95 off-road, 150 on-road because it's a wheeled vehicle. They have some armor, one on every side, so they can take some splash from artillery before they die. 120 points, you get 5 of these at trained. And in the replay I uploaded, you're going to see me use all 5 of these. You could, if you wanted to, switch to the WD-43, which gives you a bit more, but you sacrifice some armor and some speed. And because I wanted to have all of that, I chose the Scott R3. Next, I have 2 FOBs, because as a support player I feel it's my job to keep my team going. Keep handing them supplies, keep handing them things so they can throw weapons at the enemy. So that's why I have 2 FOBs. That way I can support players using my logistics choppers. I can resupply those at my FOBs. I can use my own artillery at the FOB. So this is why I have 2 of them. Next I have 2 slots or 2 cards of MI8s, and these come with 1500 liters of supplies. They're only 45 points a piece, so that's pretty cheap for a for a supply helicopter. I got 14 of these. Combined with 8 MI6, you could say that's a bit much. And actually I found that I barely use all of these, because this gives me 14 plus 4 is 18 plus 4 is 22 supply helicopters. That's a bit much. So let's delete one of these guys and instead I could get a command chopper, command infantry. These come in a star. It's not a very good vehicle. Yeah, this is better. Not great off-road speed, but doable. Keep them in the back. Support my team by capturing command zones. So next I have the Star 266. This is a supply vehicle, just your standard supply truck. Ferries in 800 liters of supplies and you get 12 of these. You could make the case that in a map as big as a 10v10, where this deck is supposed to be used, you could only rely on helicopters. And you'd have a good point. But to counter that, I'd say that sometimes you're going to have a lot of urban areas. And if you are fighting in that area, or if you want to support a player who's fighting in that area, you're going to have to find some way to get a supply unit to him safely. And a truck can usually get there a lot more safer, or a lot more safely than a command or supply helicopter. So this is why I have those. And of course you can set up an MI6 with 3,700 liters of supplies and ferry those supplies using a couple of these trucks to the guys in the town. So that's my logistics deck. I use it mostly to support. That's exactly what this thing is supposed to do. Capture supply zones and command zones that other people don't have to. They got the points to get the more expensive and more powerful units, which you cannot get from the support deck. So it's your job to capture those zones so that they can actually bring in those units. Next, in the infantry tab, I have 2 cards of these guys. Now let's have a stab at pronouncing this. Strelci Podhanlanski, maybe? If there's a Polish player, please correct me and help me with my pronunciation, because I really want to do this justice. I'm using the light infantry because the maps in 10v10 tend to be somewhat open. And these guys can play both in short range infantry battles or in medium range infantry anti-tank with their guided anti-tank weapon. Very good range, 1575. So they can do it both, and that's what gives me the flexibility. If you don't like these guys, the alternative is just the standard infantry. You can get swarms and swarms of these guys, but I found that I haven't needed them as much yet. But I haven't come up against that situation yet. I might change that later on. You could swap out one of these cards for these guys or some Saprazis. These of course come with the legendary napalm rocket launcher, which could really help clean up a town. But yeah, actually I don't need 14 of these guys. Let's get some of these in. Find a good vehicle for them. This is an AA gun on them. This is the Croc, which comes with an autocannon. Yeah, I'm going to use these guys. 10 of these. Next I have some Groms. These are my AA units and they are very, very good anti-air weapons. The Grom has 2625 meter range against helicopters, a little less so against airplanes, very good accuracy, not so much HE power. 4 is pretty average, 5 is a little better on most manpads, and they only carry 6 of these, so while they do a very good job, you will need to resupply those. And luckily you have plenty of supply units from the logistics tab, so you should be fine. Finally, I also have a couple of Conquerors in here, and these are if I want to do a long standoff defense against tanks. Keep in mind, they're not the best ATGMs, but that they're the best ATGMs that I can call in from this deck. 45% accuracy isn't stellar, and 20% or 20 points AP power will not take out any tank, but it will damage quite a few of them. Next, the support category, and this is where we earn our living as a support deck. I have all sorts of AA units because I wanted to create a large toolkit from which I could delve any unit I needed in a specific situation. First off, long range anti-airplane unit, the Niwa SC. 4500 meter range, very high HE power, very good accuracy, and you get 4 of these at veteran or 5 at hardened. I chose veteran because I want them to have a bit more accuracy, and this is the way to do it. They come on an okay platform. You also could choose the Niwa SC on a different platform here. This is more of an armored vehicle, and they carry exactly the same missile. The difference is their mobility. This thing goes 150 kph on road, and because a 10v10 can rapidly change, I found that the mobility of this vehicle is a little bit better than this one, although this one can take a hit. Again, only 4 frontal armor, so try not to expose it to tanks. It could survive a hit from maybe some infantry anti-tank weapon, but still, if you have them up against the infantry that close, you're doing something wrong. Next, I'm using Sopols. These are my anti-helicopter units. They come with a Grom, which is the same missile we just saw earlier on the infantry, which is a very good missile. And then they have the ZSU-23-2, which is your standard AA gun. AA Gatling gun, or sorry, twin autocannon as they call it. Good range against helicopters, decent range against airplanes, although not that great. They're gonna have to be flying pretty much right over this unit for it to do any damage. Accuracy is not that good, but what I do like about it is that it's not radar guided, and that means I don't have to micromanage it and turn it on and off in case a seaplane drops by. Next up is the Strelza 10M. Again, please correct me if my pronunciation is wrong. I want to do this unit justice because it's a good unit, and I think that by pronouncing stuff the right way, you're actually doing justice and paying respect to the culture. So if you have a better way to pronounce this, let me know. These guys come with, again, helicopter defense. I use these in tandem with my Sopols because I found that my Sopols run out of these Grom missiles pretty quickly. And these guys have a bit more HE power, so they're going to be a bit more effective. They have some armor. They're as mobile as the Sopol. Yeah, Sopol's a little bit better off-road. And I use these things to mostly go after helicopters because they have a good accuracy on it. A good stabilizer, so you can fire them on the move. And this makes them a good anti-helicopter unit. Now, since they're only 50 points apiece, you can use these as a one-on-one trade. because most helicopters start at about 60 points. So if you shoot down, for example, a 60 or 80 point Cobra and you lose this unit in the process, then you have traded up for 30 points, so that's okay. If you want to have a bit of a cheaper vehicle, you could go for the cheaper one, which is the BRDM. The problem with this is that it has only 4 missiles, so you need to babysit this one. The Stralza or the Stralza does not have that problem because it comes with 12. Next, I have RM70s. I didn't actually use these in the game I was playing because I haven't actually found a very good use for them yet. I'm still experimenting with this unit, trying to find the best role. If you're an expert on this unit, please let me know in the comments how you think I should use this unit. I know it has AP power, so I should be using it against light vehicles / light tanks. Accuracy is okay, low dispersion. But these things eat supplies like nothing I've seen before. Yeah, Patriots. If you have a good idea on how to use these units, please let me know. Next up is the sorry, I always get this wrong. The Hypnerit Zur 23-2S. Again, another AA gun, but in a very, very cheap, very mobile truck. It has the same gun as the Sopel. The difference is it has even less accuracy, so these things are usually spammable, especially since they're only 25 points. Worse missile, but if you spread these guys around in forests or on hills, you can really have a all-round anti-air defense focused mainly on helicopters. Next up is the Dana. I'm pretty sure you've heard of this unit because it is usually the main artillery unit for Poland. I use these things to pound out command vehicles, anti-air units, infantry if I can find it and it's not moving too fast. 7 HE power is not going to kill any tanks, so keep that in mind. Just go after lighter vehicles and they have a decent rate of fire. I'm using 4 of them at veteran because I want to be able to snipe stuff. I'm not the massive artillery spammer as you've seen in the American sport game. I prefer to have a good strike force and precisely strike targets which are worth a lot of points. Next up, BM24M. If you've never seen this unit, I encourage you to try it because it helped me in the online game I played. This is a napalm launcher for only 50 points. They are very, very cheap trucks and you can use these things to completely suppress a town using napalm. And by doing that, you deny the enemy the ability to use that town to harness it with ATGMs, general infantry or AA. And keep in mind that they can also be used to create a smoke screen. Now I know that's not the normal role for these units, but napalm sends up big black clouds of smoke. If you have 4 of these and you micromanage them along a line, you can set up a smoke screen. Only use it in an emergency though. Finally, some more AA. So I have quite a bit of AA. I got the ZSU-23, I got the Hypnerits, there you go again, the Stralza and the Sopel and the Niwa. These things I use in tandem with the Stralza or the Stralza because they have a radar guided AA gun and these guys can stun helicopters and definitely kill them. Although if they're stunned, this thing is much quicker capable of killing them. So I use them in tandem or I spread them out in forests. So that's my support. As you can see, I'm not using a ton of artillery because I don't like it. I think it's my job as a support player to support my allies using AA units. And yes, you can support allies using artillery as well. You could, for example, use one of these things, the Pioneer, which is a artillery sniper, very high HE power. If I cannot find a good use for the RM70, I will probably start using these because I found them to be very, very effective, very accurate. The one thing that's not so good about them is their long aim time. Next up, in the tank category, there's almost nothing to pick from. T-34-85s, T-72s or T-72M Jaguars. So in this case I picked T-72M Jaguars. I'm using 14 of these at hardened because this way I have a good accuracy, I have a decent a resistance to being stunned, And I found that I never ever call in 19 tanks unless something goes horribly wrong. The same logic applies to the standard 272. I use these things to soak up damage or to support infantry. Again, they're light, cheap tanks. Try not to pit them against super heavies because they'll just wipe them out in 1 or 2 shots. I have 19 at hardened, and this gives me 33 tanks, which is plenty for a support deck. Because mostly you're supporting allies which have better, faster, heavier hitting tanks or harder hitting tanks. So you don't really need this much firepower. Next up, Recon, and while I was playing I recognized that I had made a mistake here. I didn't bring a scout helicopter. So that's something I'm going to correct right now. First off, I have the T-55 Recon tank. I use these things in tandem with infantry, some vehicles and some tanks to really get a combined arms assault. And since these things are armored, 7 frontal armor, they can take a couple of hits before they go down. They got good optics. And I really like this tank, because it can just do both. It can spot, it can shoot, it can survive. Next up, BRDM-2s. Cheap scouts, just spread these around the battlefield and you get eyes on pretty much anything. And if you're using a town, bushes or a mountain like I did in the multiplayer game, you can use these infantry scouts, Zuidochi, I think? Zuidochi. Try not to get them into an infantry fight because they'll lose it. Same goes for the infantry vehicle fight. Just use them as a passive scout, a passive spotter. You see me do this in the multiplayer game, where I use these guys to spot a command vehicle so they can take it out. Now, let's delete something from the vehicle tab, and what I found to be not very effective are the ZSUs. It gives me 2 more points and I can spend that on a helicopter. Next up, the vehicles. I saw someone use these while I was playing my American support deck, so I thought, yeah, let's try these out. It's a very cheap vehicle, 10 points. 9 AP power on a 10-point vehicle is excellent, because this is cheaper than infantry. Off-road speed is horrible, 45. On-road speed is good, some armor. If you can kill 1 IFV, such as a Bradley, they earned themselves back 3 times over. So I use these guys in groups of 4 so they can mutually support each other. Support infantry, deal with vehicles while the infantry are going after heavy tanks with their anti-tank weaponry. And I get 19 of these at hardened. I've never found a use for 24 of these guys, but if you want to spam something, you could spam these. TO-55s, these are the napalm tanks, and I use these to fight infantry, whether they're in bushes, whether they're in towns. These guys will take care of them. A good napalm launcher. They also come with a standard main gun, so they can actually take out a vehicle at a good range before unleashing on the infantry. So this is basically your all-round anti-infantry solution. I would recommend having these things at hardened, because they will be right on the front line. They're going to be the vanguard against infantry, which means they will take fire from at least something, whether it's a vehicle or infantry. They'll take fire. Trained guys are much quicker to panic, where hardened guys, they are less likely to panic, so they're much more effective. Finally, I have some Conquerors, and these are my ATGM units. I use these in ambushes. I use these when I'm encountering a lot of tanks, because these have 10 missiles each. Pretty cheap. You only need to kill 1 or 2 tanks with them to get their money back. Good range, of course, good accuracy, well, decent accuracy for an ATGM, really, it's not that good. And 20 AP power. Using 7 at hardened because I want a bit more accuracy out of my vehicle, so that's why I'm using these guys at hardened. Next up, helicopters. This is where Poland really doesn't have a lot to pick from. You got the Mi-2 URS. And in case there's an airborne player in the game, I will be using these things to steal the helicopters from them. Because these have autocannons against helicopters and good AA helicopters, or AA missiles. They're only 50 points, so they're quite cheap. I have 10 of them at hardened, so 2 cards of 5. And this gives me a good flying AA capability. Next up is a more attack helicopter. And as I was describing it also in the actual gameplay, This looks to me like a transport helicopter which suddenly got weapons mounted on it. It is not a gunship. It can perform more or less that role of gunship, but it won't excel at it. What I use these for is to support pushes. These things can fly above or near my assaulting tanks and try to get side shots on vehicles, try to deal with any helicopters. Because they do carry stray loss, although the accuracy on those are pretty atrocious. They're only 45 points, so you can use them quite freely, because if you lose these, it's not that bad. Finally, I have the air category. Now again, I'm supporting other players, so that's what this thing is built for. So therefore, first off, I started in by adding in a seaplane. This is the Su-22 M4P. And this thing will take out any radar source, so an anti-air gun or an anti-air missile, at a range of 4.2 clicks. Keep in mind that is inside the range of a Patriot. This thing does have 40% ECM, but if they have a Patriot battery of 2, you will lose this plane. Unless they have it turned off, of course, because it's the coming. I have not actually used these in the deck. I tried to use them, but there was just no AA around. There was just nothing for these things to shoot at. So later on I hope to give you an answer on how these things perform. But I have these in my deck to support other players. Other players can bring in more expensive, more effective aircraft, which really excel usually when there's no AA around. Next up is a napalm bomber. Again, haven't used these. I've only used one aircraft from this deck so far, and that's the Su-22. I use these guys to bomb napalm on infantry, on important roads, forests, if I come up across it. They have 8 500 kilogram bombs, which is a lot of napalm. So these things will really wipe out a town. Keep in mind though that if you drop napalm, it's going to take about 60 to 90 seconds before they actually the smoke clears up, because and that will leave you blind on that area for 60 to 90 seconds. Next up is a tank sniper. I didn't come up against expensive tanks in this game, so I haven't used these things yet, but if I'm spotting a super heavy, so say something in the likes of an M1A2, a Leclerc, a Leopard 2A5, stuff like that, that is when I use the Su-22 M4, and with this I can really snipe a tank from 3,500 meter range. 50% accuracy, 2 missiles, so they'll probably hit at least 1. 30 AP power, you can penetrate anything. Next up, MiG-21 MF. These have 4 240mm rockets, so very effective against infantry and light vehicles. Of course, I already have this napalm bomber, but this is more of an area suppression weapon, where this thing is more of a, I suppose you could call it a sniper. This thing will take down artillery if it's out in the open. It'll take out infantry if it's out in the open. It will take out some vehicles, although not tanks, but you can probably stun tanks with 11 HE power. Finally, a medium-priced air superiority fighter, the MiG-29. Good Vimpel missiles against helicopters. 60% accuracy is very, very nice. And they have the long-range Vimpel, the R-27R. 7,700 meter range, 60% accuracy. Again, I've not called in these guys. If you have, please let me know in the comments below what you think of these. It's one of the few air superiority fighters I can bring in this deck, so I decided to bring in the best one I could. You could take 2 of these at trained or 1 at elite. I think 1 at elite will do, but usually I have a lot of points in reserve, so I could call in 2 of these and have them fly out in tandem to go after any aircraft they find. So that's my support deck. It might not be what you're expecting from a normal support deck, because I'm not the artillery spamming person, but this is how I believe a support deck should be set up. Of course, your opinion may differ, and I respect that. Please let me know what you think of the support deck and how you would use a support deck in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Again, you guys are the reason I make these videos. So let me know what you think. If you have a specific video you want me to make, if you want me to cover a specific deck, just ask. I need your inspiration because sometimes I just don't know what kind of video to record. So let me know what you'd like to see and I'll record it for you. Thanks for watching yet another one of my videos, and I hope to see you again soon.